Hey guys, what's going on? In this podcast, I'm going to reveal some of the shocking trades that could be making you a ton of money in 2025. Now, these are completely against consensus, but in this podcast, I'm going to present some high evidence data to help you see that what is happening now is some of these trades are completely not priced in, and that creates, by definition, when you trade options, a colossal opportunity on some of the greatest entries in the market history right now. Now, to be specific, and to help you understand better some of these trades, we absolutely have to go back in time and review the Reagan presidency to understand a little better the Reagonomics. Refresh that, and you'll be able to better understand the Trumponomics, or should we call it Trump-Musknomics, going into 2025 and beyond. So, as you know, Reagan was Trump's hero. A lot of the policies that Trump is proposing, that technically not his policies, they're policies borrowed from Reagan administration. So in order to understand better what is happening, or what is the likelihood of something happening, let's go back in history real quick and review Reaganomics. Okay, so number one, what did Reagan campaign on? And that's pretty clear. Everyone should be familiar with that. Reagan was campaigning on lower taxes, and he was campaigning on definitely cutting the government spending. He was campaigning on peace. And one of the things that very vividly still remembered to this day from his campaign days is his belief that stronger dollar means stronger America. And that's quote unquote. So let's actually now revisit 1981 through 1989 and see if any of these campaign promises were fulfilled. So let's start with the lower taxes. In 1981, after Reagan inauguration on January 20th, 1981, he did begin lowering taxes. The tax rate was lowered. However, as the common sense would dictate, that lowering taxes and cutting government spending are two opposite things that don't go together. So what most of the people don't talk about is the fact that he lowered the taxes, but it was unsustainable. So taxes had to be raised, and they were raised in 82, 83, 84, and 87. So throughout his first term and throughout his second term, there was multiple instances where taxes were raised. Now, as far as government spending, the idea was solid to cut government spending, but did it ever come to fruition? The answer is no. It was absolutely impossible to cut out government spending. As a matter of fact, what we're seeing similarly is highly contradictory, right? Reagan created this committee. What they didn't call it Dodge back then. They actually didn't even have a name for it, but it was another government department that was overseeing fair trade practices. I mean, they could have called it the tariff department to give it an accurate description. So basically, instead of really cutting government spending, they created extra departments, which by definition would raise government spending. The same shit is now. What is Doge? It's just like the 2 plus 2 just doesn't add up. You're going to go create another government department in order to cut government spending. Hello? Is anybody fucking there? So your strategy of cutting government spending is to create extra government departments? How does that mathematically equate to government spending? But yet, I mean, the similarities are there, and they all date to the Reagan presidency, 1981, 1989. So the idea of peace during the campaign resolves into the first thing that actually takes place. One of the first two things that take place under Reagan is the NATO expansion. In 1982, another country becomes a part of NATO, which was Spain at the moment. And every time Reagan visits Europe, he keeps promoting NATO expansion. So military spending goes through the roof since the early days of his presidency. Well, again, we got a walking contradiction here. If you really is intending to create conditions of peace, why the fuck are you increasing military spending? So the promises of Trump to resolve the war in Ukraine, he has already triple walked that back. All he had to do is basically say, look, we're going to cut out the fucking weapons supply. We're going to cut that out completely. And yeah, the war would have been stopped potentially on day one. Potentially the war would have already stopped if he made the point that there's no fucking way that Ukraine's going to get any more military aid, and thousands of fucking people would have been saved. If not hundreds of thousands, I mean, we're talking potentially millions of people. Now, the latest update on Ukraine is now he's got this committee that he created, basically saying, well, it's going to take 100 days to stop the war in Ukraine. So you go from day one to 100 days. And on top of that, so that's 2 double walk backs. And then on top of that, you're appointing people that are actually war hawks. So to me, everything so far is congruent with the Reagan administration. You campaign on peace, but when you become a president, the first thing Reagan does is the war in El Salvador. Fucking anybody remembers that shit, okay? So United States supplies weapons. No, that can't be fucking real. United States supplies weapons to El Salvador, to a dictatorship. Whoa, well, that can't be real. Are you serious? Yeah, well, wow, what's going on? Really? United States supplying weapons to a regime that is a dictatorship. That just can't be true. Well, unless you look at, hundreds of other instances where United States have fucking done that. Completely 1981, 1982, all the way through 1984. It goes on, not for an instance, it goes on for years, as the United States not only supplying weapons to El Salvador, but it also trains the military. Hello? Anybody fucking there? Trains the military of El Salvador. And it's all done under the sauce of, well, we gotta eradicate communism. There was no fucking communism in El Salvador, okay? They had a bunch of farmers, okay, that were trying to stand up for their rights. And you had military dictators that were trained by the United States military. As a matter of fact, the commander of the El Salvadorian army was on CIA payroll. And that is the fucking guy that eradicated 1,000 civilians in one day. at what the world barely remembers now as the El Mazote massacre. Took place on December 12, 1981. Now, please tell me that shit is not planned, because the next military offensive takes place on December 13th, 1983, where United States basically invades Grenada. So as soon as Reagan becomes the president, three things, literally, within a year of his presidency. NATO expansion, which is the main reason the war in between Russia and Ukraine has been going on now for a few years. I mean, you got 1,000 civilians killed by U.S. military in El Salvador. 553 kids. December 12th, 81. And, of course, you know, some of you probably listening to this, you just hear this shit for the first time. Because just like the market, people have very short-term memory for things like this. I mean, this is literally an act of terror committed by the United States. Nobody fucking remembers it, right? And by the way, guess who were they supplying the weapons to in El Salvador? They were fucking Nazis. They had a Nazi regime, a dictatorship regime. Who are they supplying the weapons to right now in Ukraine? Goddamn Nazis. The history doesn't change, which is why, you know, it pays to go back and look through the history. So, Grenada, December 13th, 1983. Fucking, they just sent fucking troops. You know, they figured, wow, we couldn't win the war in Vietnam. So what we're going to do, we're going to start small now. Let's just see if we can at least fuck up Grenada. Still on the same sauce. Well, we got to eradicate communism. Fucking bullshit. Okay? Now, outside of support for Nazis in El Salvador and complete illegal invasion of Grenada, just because we don't like their regime, we're going to go fucking invade it. Here's your fucking democracy, fucking United States. 1982, the war in Lebanon. Oh my God. Are you talking about hostages? Yeah, hostages? Hostages. God damn. Well, that's impossible. I mean, Gaza hostages all over the news. Well, back then there were American hostages because Reagan decides to send military, U.S. military to Lebanon, as in that point in time, Israel was invading Lebanon. No shit. Israel. Another war. God damn. Israel must be fucking trained by the United States. Oh, can this be fucking true? Show me any 10-year period in history where Israel is not at a fucking war with somebody or not invading somebody. Show me a 1-year period in history where United States doesn't have a fucking war. So they can say, you know, they're campaigning for peace, but if we analyze all of this stuff that's happening, by the way, the 1982 Lebanon, sending troops to Lebanon ends up in a disaster for the United States. 200 people, military servicemen get killed. Some of them get taken hostage. As a result, comes one of the most unconstitutional historic moments in the United States. Basically, Reagan decides that, hey, well, Congress doesn't want to give me money to interfere in Nicaragua, and they don't want to give me a budget to support the Contras. Basically, it was a war in Nicaragua going on between Sandinistas and Contras, and Reagan wanted to find a way how to fund the Contras, because, again, under the sauce of let's fight fucking communism. And shockingly, Sandinistas were funded by Carter. Carter used a different rationality and basically said, look, well, if we're not going to give the weapons to Sandinistas, then the Soviet Union is going to give it to them. And that's exactly what happened. The moment Reagan withdraw weapon supplies to Sandinistas. Anyways, the most unconstitutional fact is to get out the American hostages, he makes a deal with Iran to sell them some weapons. Well, the invoices for these weapons get highly inflated, and there comes the extra funds for the war in Nicaragua. So, crazy shit, okay? And that is from someone that was campaigning for peace. Within the first 2 years of the administration, you got 4 multiple war fronts going on, okay? And we'll get back to that as we're going through some of the charts that are highly critical for your trading, as far as putting some 50x, 100x trade potential as a result of these lengthy explanations. So keep all of this in mind, okay? Now, the last thing, as far as Reagan campaign, remember, stronger dollar equals stronger America. Well, guess what happens in 1985? September 22 to be exact. Actually, a lot of the dates going back to Reagan, it's like the 22nd is the day, right? So September 22nd, 1985. I mentioned it to you guys in multiple podcasts, but it is the Plaza Accord. Well, the goal was to reduce the trade deficit, right? The means of the Plaza Accord to reduce the trade deficit of the United States, which was spiraling out of control. As a matter of fact, 1985 was the second year in history of the highest ratio between trade deficit and GDP. The only other year where that ratio was exceeded was in 2006. Now, for those of you that are actually paying attention, 1985, highest ratio of trade deficit to GDP resolves in what? 1987, biggest one-day drop in history to this day, a market crash. 2006, fast forward 2 years later, what happens? Fucking year 2008 collapse. So if there's any historic precedence or indication that there you have it. You got two of the biggest historic collapses. They take place within 14 to 24 months after the level of trade deficit to GDP is maxed the fuck out. So now, so much for the democracy and free trade practices, right? Basically, the Plaza Accord, Reagan got together with Germany and Japan, and he said, basically, guys, you're going to have to do whatever the fuck we're going to tell you to do. And of course, you know, Germany is a fucking bitch of United States, and so is Japan, is another United States bitch. They're like, okay, master, we will do whatever the fuck you want us to do. What do you want us to do? You want us to hurt our country? We'll do it. We'll do it at the expense of you potentially reducing your trade deficit, master. So them bitches, the Germany and the Japan, they agreed to some absolutely stupid, okay, at the moment where they really shouldn't be lowering taxes and they shouldn't be lowering their interest rates. United States tells them, this is what you fucking gotta do because our trade deficit is through the roof and we need to fix that. So them idiots, Japan and Germany, say, okay, master, we'll do whatever the fuck you want us to do. And they do that. And what happens in Japan? Japan is fucked for years. Okay, it is the Plaza Accord that leads to the complete collapse of the Japanese markets, real estate, financial, stock market by the end of 1980s. And Japan doesn't recover from that shit for 20 years. So that is what Reagan done okay, basically, he manipulated an artificial agreement to lower United States dollar exchange rate in relation to some other major currencies in an attempt to lower the trade deficit, which in 1985 was standing at 5% of the GDP. Currently, in 2024, the last data, and clearly we just rolled over in 2025, we don't have the latest data. We don't have the data yet for 2025, but at the end of 2024, okay, we've got trade deficit standing at 3.8% of GDP, which was a pretty big number, and that could be partially one of the main reasons why Warren Buffett, okay, began to sell a lot of his stocks and going into cash, because when GDP gets to that level, and there is indication that that level could skyrocket at any given moment, what happens with the next 2 years? I mean, shit collapses. You get a 100% outcome of a severe market crash. We'll get to that in a moment. But following the Plaza Accord on September 22nd, Reagan gives a speech on September 23rd, 1985, where he basically says, hey, don't get me wrong. This is not a trade war, y'all. This is not a trade war. We're not going to use and abuse these laws, or by laws, he didn't use the word tariffs, but clearly these new laws, the tariffs, okay, he said, we're not using these tariffs for protectionism, but for the promotion of free trade. And he gets a standing ovation. I mean, the guy gets a standing ovation every speech, but did anybody just not pay fucking attention to what he said? We're not using tariffs are for free trade. That's great. The Plaza Accord is an actual agreement between Western countries to artificially, this is not free market, okay? Artificially lower a fucking United States dollar by telling other countries what the fuck they have to do. And then the next day he's giving a speech saying, hey, this is not for protectionism. This is for the promotion of free trade. Are you fucking out of your mind? And so this Plaza Accord, the artificial manipulation of United States currency, and telling other people what the fuck they got to do with the policies in their countries, okay, comes from a man who campaigned on strong dollar means strong America. And here he is, September 22nd, signing a deal to artificially devalue United States dollar because the trade deficits were getting completely out of fucking control. So far, what do we have? Reagan campaigned on lower taxes, which were lowered in 81, but were raised in 82, 83, 84, 87 because, well, shit, it was unsustainable, because that was partially why the budget deficit was growing. 1980s Reagan administration was known for the twin deficits. It's a situation where you have a budget deficit and a trade deficit getting completely out of fucking control. So, after lowering taxes, what happens? The budget deficit gets out of control. When budget deficit gets out of control, a portion of that contributes to the trade deficit. And clearly, the inflation was also getting out of control. And therefore, if we step just a year or two preceding to when Reagan took office in 1981, in 1979, Paul Volcker was appointed as the Fed chairman. And if we were to compare a current moment in present history, even though Powell still got a little bit of time left on his term, we could be comparing the current moment in history to the Paul Volcker awakening moment where, Federal Reserve basically realized, well, shit, we don't have anything under control. We don't have inflation under control, and therefore we should not be cutting rates. We should be doing exactly the opposite. So the probability of Fed actually going and increasing rates seemed like absolutely insane idea, because it would definitely get the country in a severe state of recession, just like it went through shortly after the nomination. Actually, the drop began before inauguration of Reagan on January 20th, 81. The drop began shortly after the elections, and for the statistical purposes, bear this number in mind. From November of 1980, after Reagan was elected, going forward, the market drops after his inauguration. He cuts taxes, the market continues dropping. Anyways, you got a 34% drop in the market, okay, within a year after Reagan takes office. Now, understand that he was campaigning on lower taxes, on government, reducing government spending. He was campaigning on peace, and he was campaigning on stronger dollar, which clearly he understands, well, stronger dollar doesn't make the America stronger. It increases the trade deficit to the fucking moon. And then you got another problem, which is, fighting the budget deficit and the trade deficit. So from a guy that believed in a strong dollar, he becomes a guy who says, well, shit, we need to devalue dollar in 1985. Basically, guys, this whole thing is just a big fucking joke, okay? As far as a politician campaigning on one thing, anyone should be asking a question is, okay, campaigning on something is one thing, but what is the probability of all those things actually taking place? The idea of lower taxes sounds good. The cut in government spending sounds good. The idea of peace talks sounds good, but never fucking happens. United States has participated in over 240 wars worldwide in the last 100 years, and that number is only increasing. Yet they reprimand countries that had 1 or 2 wars in the last 100 years. They call people dictators at their convenience, but yet they support the dictators at their convenience. They have dictators on the CIA payroll. They got, and look, 80s is no different from what's happening now, It's a big fucking mess. But United States policy does not change. The foreign policy doesn't change. So just because Trump says, hey, I'll get you peace on the first day, it ain't gonna fucking happen. Which you should take consideration of that as you're moving forward in your trading in 2025. So now that you know the difference between the campaign, the promises of campaign, and the probability of actually accomplishing this, okay, let's just take a glance on how, just understand that Reagonomics and Trumponomics basically the same thing. And what Reagan has attempted and failed to do from 81 to 89 is basically what Trump is going to be facing this term. And I mean, it makes actually for a pretty easy trading predictions when you understand the correlation between of all these things. And clearly, I cannot be giving you every trade for the 2025, but I'm just going to outline some of the easiest trades that you could be taking in 2025 with a duration of anywhere from a couple of months to a couple of years out. And the first trade I want to discuss with you guys is the drop in gold. So if we go back, and guys, this is highly, highly contradictory because the world thinks gold is going higher. Every Wall Street analyst thinks that the gold is, the only way gold can go is higher. Well, apparently, they have not considered the fact that if the market really right now is in a state of a Paul Volcker moment, where basically Fed's been telling you, hey, we got inflation under control, Well, in the last Fed meeting, Powell says he don't have shit under control. He finally admitted what we have been telling you about here at Third Year Market Moves channel for the last 12 months, is the inflation is going to go higher, and at some point, Federal Reserve is going to have to admit it. Well, that moment just arrived on December 18th, 2024. And yet, the market is still trading within a few percentage points from all-time highs. So the Fed confession has arrived, but the market reaction to the Fed confession has not materialized yet to the full extent. We're seeing just the early beginnings of it. So let's go back to 1980, 1981, 1982, 1983 charts, just to give you an idea of a few very simple trades. So, if we're correct about the Paul Volcker moment, then this time frame in the charts from 1980 to 1983, 1984 is very, very relevant to the current trading conditions. We already have clear confirmations that dollar is pretty much going steady higher day by day with the exception of a few pullbacks. We pointed that out in multiple podcasts. We pointed out that one of our top trades right the day after Trump election was gold puts. Tesla calls gold puts. And Tesla was a great trade on the call side, but many people don't realize that gold puts now 3 times in a row since Trump has been elected in November, gold puts has produced combinedly a way greater trade than Tesla calls. And we believe that is likely to continue. So the easiest strategy is to short gold on any bounce. Because believe it or not, if you study the charts from 1980 to 1982, gold actually exceeded the overall market drop. To be specific, from September 1980, okay, literally 4 months it's a month before Reagan gets elected, but 3 months before Reagan inauguration, gold begins dropping. So I would say this is very similar condition to what we are observing in the markets right now. Basically, you have a situation where gold began dropping literally on the election day when Trump won. And it's been in a downward spiral with an exception of some good-sized bounces, which all resolved into a downside move overall. If we study the history from September 80th to June 82, I'm not going to give you the answer right away. Just think to yourself, oh, how much can gold be down? I already told you. It was down more than the fucking market itself, right? Which, again, is highly contradictory. You know, everybody, like, if you have inflation spiraling out of control, don't you think that gold should be going higher? No, gold is not going to go higher when dollar is spiraling the fuck higher out of control. And by giving you this quick history lesson of Reaganomics and what has been promised and what has actually happened from 81 to 89, we know that in majority of cases when dollar moves higher and there's absolutely no outcome for the dollar but to move higher, just like it did from 80 through 85, which resulted in Plaza Accord to actually devalue dollar artificially. Okay, we're facing the same market conditions right now. That's why dollar is going up since we pointed that fact out that, under Trump administration, he may say he wants to cut taxes. He may say he wants to cut government spending. But all the actions already pointed to the fact that it's not going to be accomplished. Not to say that he's not going to cut taxes. Yes, he's going to cut taxes, but what history tells us, just because he's going to cut taxes now does not necessarily mean that he's not going to be raising taxes in not so distant future. And just because he's cutting taxes, the market may be pricing a move higher in the market as a result of that. But what we know, if we study the history of one of the biggest tax cuts under Reagan administration in 1981, it did not resolve in the market moving higher. As an opposite, the market downward spiral actually accelerated. But let's focus on gold for a moment. So I basically gave you the answer. Gold dropped more than the market, which means gold dropped more than 34%. But the actual number is astounding. Gold actually dropped from basically Reagan election going to June 82. Within that time frame, gold drops 60%. That's right, 60% drop in gold. 60%. So there are some exceptions, however, you should be aware of when it comes to trading gold. And those some exceptions I've outlined in multiple podcasts before, which be a gold bull when there is war escalation. Be a gold bear when there is an acceleration of peace potential or peace talks. So the quick history review I have given you on one of the first few things that Reagan does when he becomes the president. Remember, the El Salvador, supporting Nazis, supplying them with weapons. Well, that wasn't a big, huge deal in terms of increasing the budget deficit, because El Salvador at the time, and still is, a pretty small country. And so we're not talking about like a Vietnam War type commitment or wasting billions of dollars like in terms of Ukraine. We're talking a pretty small effect. So the Nazi support by Reagan administration in El Salvador did not resolve in a huge move in gold. But it's the war in Lebanon that gives us a very odd time frame on the charts which doesn't happen for this amount of time nowhere in history. You have a situation where you have dollar and gold moving higher at the same time. The specific time frame I'm referring to is June 82 through February 83. Gold and USD both move higher in the same direction. So oftentimes you hear me say, well, sometimes correlations are very strong, sometimes they go away, sometimes they keep appearing and disappearing. But we're about to go in a moment of some really, really strong correlations between certain things. And I'm going to try to shed some light in the next podcast of where could the correlation ultimately evolve between dollar and Bitcoin and gold. And just don't miss the next podcast, guys. But for the purpose of this, to keep it simple, understand that when Reagan becomes the president, or since his election, gold makes a 60% drop, exceeding the drop in the market within the same time frame. However, the war in Lebanon in 1982 begins a move in gold to the magnitude of 50% from June 82nd to February 83rd. So you have wild moves in gold, which are perfect for trading opportunities, right? Have 60% drop in gold, followed by a complete destruction of a typical correlation between gold and dollar. And now for the first time, they go together for 8 months in the same direction. Now, understanding, yes, this is a complete outlier, but again, the move in that particular time frame between gold and USD, the move in gold was largely due to the catalyst of war escalation in the Middle East. So it is important to distinguish that, and that is something that we keep here. We keep detailed basically on the microscope, guys. We've nailed every oil move in last year. We have nailed probably 80% of the gold moves in the last 12, 14 months. And from the trading perspective, I'm basically giving you a roadmap that in the next year, 2 years, gold could drop 60%. There's going to be time frames, though, where, despite of Trump saying there's going to be peace talks and he's going to make a world a one peaceful, beautiful place, and he can say whatever he wants, but that's not going to happen, and there is going to be war escalation, and during those moments, you absolutely do not want to stay short gold. And for that reason, if you don't want to miss those key pivotal moments, that would be a reason to sign up to trade with 13 Market Moves Coach by going to 13mmtv.com, 13marketmoves.com. So basically, 80s under the Reagan administration gives us beautiful opportunities to trade gold. First on the put side, which would currently coincide with a potential still. Gold is only down about 7-8% off all-time highs, recent all-time highs, and potentially we still have about 50% plus left in the move. I'm not saying that's a 50% drop over the next month. I'm saying that there's going to be some phenomenal gold trades, and they're not going to be on the call side as expected pretty much unanimously by Wall Street and the trading community. And if we're correct at identifying this historic precedence and time frame, there's going to be a ton of money made on gold puts, not on gold calls. But it is clearly important to understand that there's going to be moments where gold will absolutely reverse its downward trend, and it's going to pop on any news of war escalation, on new war, or anything that you hear war, escalation, that's the time to be long gold, not short. So, interestingly, from the period of February 83, which again, at that point, we have a de-escalation. Okay, at that point, we have a de-escalation in El Salvador. We have de-escalation in Grenada. We have Lebanon, Israel, de-escalation. So a lot of those escalations that were beginning in 81, 82, they're now dwindling down. And from February 83 to February 85, shocker or not, gold drops again. By how much? 60 fucking %. So hold on, Leo. Are you saying so Reagan takes administration, gold drops 60%, okay, within a year and a half, and then you have gold goes 50% higher within 8 months, and then again, gold drops 60 fucking % again? Yes, guys, that's what I'm saying. I'm telling you, gold is going to be one of the most magnificent trades in the next 4 years. But if you actually want to conclude the Reagan administration gold trading techniques, from February 85 to December 87, guess what? Guess what? Fucking gold goes high by 50%. No fucking way. So it drops 60%, it goes high 50%, it drops 60%, and it goes down 50%. Like, Leo, just tell me, how the fuck do I trade this? Yeah, I'll tell you exactly how the fuck you trade this. You go to 13mmtv.com, take all the fucking courses so you understand the charts, and then you would know how to trade it. But even if you still had some questions, you sign up to trade with the 13 Market Moves coach. That's how you do it. But if we were to break it down, right, what happens in 85? You have a Plaza Accord to devalue dollar. And so sometimes, people think, okay, well, if dollar goes down, well, gold should go up. Like, sometimes there's a market delay, okay? Just like, when we had the war in Lebanon started in June 82, but gold did not start the rally until later part of June in 82. So it was a few weeks of a delay effect. September 22nd was officially the day of artificial dollar devaluation of the Plaza Accord. But a few months past that, gold is still dropping, okay, until we get to February of 85. And that's when the actual correlation kicks in. Dollar begins to drop off sharply, and that's when gold takes off. So that period of devaluation, artificial devaluation of the dollar from February 85 to December 87, dollar keeps dropping, gold goes higher by 50%. And so that artificial experiment of dollar devaluation ends up on October 19th in what? Well, you guys know, fucking October 19th. Come on, you'd better fucking know that. Biggest one-day crash in the world ever seen until this day. So we're going now into a setup where we could potentially see under the Trump administration, because this is his second term, 1987 happened under the second term of Reagan administration, we actually have an elevated probability of a one-day drop in the market history that could exceed the October 19th, 1987, based on this historic analog and historical data, and based on the similarities in the policies that basically are pretty much identical. If you look through 81 and 89, I mean, that's what you should be expecting from the Trump administration 25 through 29. Okay, so gold. Now, as to trade gold, let me just say this because it is absolutely obnoxious how some of you trade gold. Sometimes when a trader hears, well, gold is going to go up or down, what does the trader do? Well, let me go buy calls or puts on gold stocks. Well, let me go trade GLD. Absolutely fucking not. Okay? If you want to have the greatest appreciation on your calls or puts, you want to trade the underlying, meaning actual gold futures themselves. You would trade puts or calls on that. In order to do that, you need to have a margin account. You need to get in touch with your broker, and you need to get approved to trade futures. Now, you're not going to be able to do it on a Robinhood account. That's bullshit. If you respect yourself as a trader, that's not where you fucking trade. Okay? Guys, there's no excuse not to have a good trading account, which used to be with TD Ameritrade. Now Schwab owns it. It's still one of the better places to get an account. Interactive Brokers, Tasty Trade. It's probably the number one spot to have an account right now. So make sure you get your account set up with those 3 brokers, and don't be using, God forbid, don't use some bullshit like TradeStation. Okay, that's going to hold your money. They got weird margin requirements. You're not going to be able to use your profits for future trades. I mean, I've posted multiple videos about these things, so you should know this shit by now. All right, so set up your account to trade options on gold futures. And you will position yourself with an edge, understanding these historic precedents and the map that I just laid out. You will be able to trade both puts and calls on gold. That could be the greatest fucking trade going into the next 4 years. So, simply because the move in gold, based on this historic precedent, exceeded the move in the market. The market drops 34%. So sure, you could say, well, I'm going to trade SPY, Leo. Fuck it. I don't want to go set up my account to trade gold. Well, that's how, okay, you're going to make some money trading SPY puts. And someone is going to exponentially exceed what you make on SPY puts by trading gold puts. Okay? So you always want to trade, when we talk about directional options, you want to trade something that moves in a big way. You need big moves to make a lot of money with directional options. That's what you need. And so ultimately, you want to pick an instrument that's going to move by far, by a larger magnitude than the other instruments that you're considering trading. So all things being equal, yeah, the market is dropping and gold is dropping, but gold could potentially drop by twice as much on certain days or 3 times as much on certain days as S&P 500. So which one would you want to fucking trade? So the elevated probability of colossal trades on gold is here. We've briefly touched upon some of the foreign policy, some of the promises politicians make that you could use to your advantage by understanding that most of these promises will never be fulfilled. And while the market could be pricing a certain thing, then exactly the opposite thing is likely to happen. Now, one of the easiest trades that we're already getting confirmations on is the bond crash. It goes back to the 1980 bond crash. So it slightly precedes the Reagan taking office, or the move to the downside. In this particular instance, 1980 through June 1982, bonds and gold make the same move. It is an astounding move to the downside. And it's all based, guys, it's based on the same type of market conditions we have right now. It is the inflation getting an uptick every month, and Fed actually making a confession that they fucked up again. Well, in 1979, Paul Volcker said, look, Federal Reserve fucked up, and I'm going to raise rates. Ain't shit nobody can do about it. And that's how inflation was won in the 80s. But right now we have a weak Fed. Okay, we have a weak Fed by basically, they know they need to be raising rates, but they fucking can't. Instead, they're lowering rates because they know if they raise rates, I mean, you're going to have one of the greatest fucking historical collapses in the United States. That's a fact. So the Fed is in a corner. It's died. Or, another possible thing is things can get really out of control even if they lower rates, which they've been doing, but the yields keep going high. So the bond crash that many people think, hey, this is the level you should be buying, like the 30-year is where all the action is happening, like the TLTs in the 85 handle. I mean, we still got room to go. I mean, we still got room to go to a 3-year low of 82. We're getting closer there. So until we touch that level, I mean, this is not the time to be buying bonds. And if Trump is serious about all these tariffs and all that shit, I mean, there's one thing that is clear, that trade deficit is going to go higher, budget deficit is going to go higher, inflation is going to go higher, especially if he manages to cut taxes. And, I mean, it all translates into higher yields, bonds continue lower, gold continues lower. Market at some point understands that, hey, Fed actually did fuck up, and the market goes lower. So the outcome for a lot of things now is to go lower. The only question to consider is, will Bitcoin move higher as a result, or will it resolve to its normal correlation with the dollar? Is Bitcoin going through that moment like gold and dollar did from June 82nd through February 83 for 8 months? Could this time frame be diminished? And at which point Bitcoin resumes its normal correlation with the dollar, meaning dollar lower, Bitcoin higher, right? I mean, that was the whole foundational basis for Bitcoin. Well, dollar's going to collapse and Bitcoin's going to go higher. As Bitcoin is the real money. Bitcoin is it, right? Well, so far, what we've seen since Trump victory is both dollar and Bitcoin are going higher, pretty much on day-to-day basis. So is this a moment of a divergence, just like we had historically for 8 months in June 82 through February 83 between gold and USD? Or is that now going to be the actual correlation between USD and Bitcoin? And that would be important to figure out why. Well, because it wouldn't be a shocker that we had something similar to the 1985 Accord, because dollar will run higher. Again, it's simple. We're looking at twin deficits, again, just like we did in the 1980s. Got inflation issues in the United States, and now also tariffs and lower taxes. All of that stuff is inflationary. So the setup looks very similar to the first Reagan term. And it wouldn't be a shocker if, in not so distant future, something that resembles the Plaza Accord took place again. And in my view, it is already happening. When you have Trump basically telling Germany, hey, y'all can't buy Russian gas. You're going to have to buy American gas. Okay, and guess what? We're not going to fucking sell you American gas until you're going to buy some of our shit, because we need to reduce our trade deficit. Like, it is the same, the September 22nd, 1985 Plaza Accord, it's named Accord, I guess from French, decor, it's a word of agreement. Now, I wouldn't say that in 1985 they just sat in the Plaza Hotel in New York and they decided to have a round of drinks, and Germany and Japan just willingly said, okay, go ahead, fuck us, United States. We'll just go along with it. I'm sure there has been some ultimatums for Japan and Germany to do something that would be damaging to their economies, because essentially what was done is Japan and Germany agreed to have the problem that United States had. So what did United States actually do to twist their arm for them idiots to actually say, yes, we're going to fuck our countries so United States could be better off? And, you don't have to go far in history just to understand how Europe just fucked themselves, and Europe is in total chaos by cutting their ties with Russia. Germany is on the verge of a collapse politically and economically. It's never been that bad. And it is the result of the same outcome, Hey, we're going to tell you, United States basically tells Europe what the fuck they got to do. And even though it is damaging to Europe, they fucking do it. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw some kind of repetition of the Plaza Accord. But again, in my view, it is already happening publicly, and Trump has not even taken office yet. We are, what is today is the 9th. So, we're 11 days away from Trump taking office. But yet, I think the Plaza Accord, even though not on paper, it is happening now in 2025. 40 years later, I think we will see the Plaza Accord, because let me just break it down. When one country wants to dictate all the other countries and preach free economy principles, and they're doing it by actually dictating and manipulating other countries, then by itself, it makes it the dictatorship and manipulation, not the free economy setup. Not the invisible hand here doing everything. It's the American hand that is trying to tell everyone what the fuck to do. Now, I'll just bring two quick little examples. Right, in the 1980s, Reagan placed 100% tariff on Japanese cars. In a state of free economy, okay, it's the people that choose what they want to buy. And considering the gas prices crisis in the 70s, a lot of American people that wanted a more fuel efficient car, and that's what Japan produced, and that's what Japan delivered, and on top of that they made it a better quality. So it is not that you needed to place a tariff to protect the American consumer from buying the better goods. What you needed to do is for United States companies to produce a better vehicle, a better quality, and a better suitable to the higher gas prices. But that never fucking happened. So, therefore, Japan became extremely competitive because they had better quality product at a competitive price that consumers preferred based off the economic conditions and high gas prices. So you don't fix that situation by telling Japan, well, shit, we're going to artificially make your shit sell for twice more here to protect our automotive production. That's not how you protect automotive production. It's like a 5-year-old can understand that. But so what's happening now already is Trump is telling other countries that, hey, you're going to have to buy our shit because that's good for our trade deficit. But anybody in the right state of mind is not going to want to buy Boeing airplanes. You can twist China's arm and say, well, look, y'all, you're going to have to fucking take this junk off our hands. I know the fucking doors are flying out, and now fucking chances are, a lot of y'all Chinese going to get fucking killed. But who cares? You guys got 1.4 billion. If there's any country we can unload these goddamn Boeing planes, it's going to be China because, hey, a few 100,000 get killed over there, nobody's going to get noticed, right? That's what they're going to fucking reason. They don't give a shit. Oh, well, we need to reduce our trade deficit. Somebody fucking buy this junk that we make. Like, that's not free economy. You're gonna twist somebody's arm to buy shit that they don't want to buy. Where's the fucking democracy here? Where's the free trade economy here? Where's all the shit that, United States is fucking trying to always teach the whole world about, the shit that it never does itself? It gets fucking ridiculous. But we're at a point where, China is in a position, nobody thinks about it, right? Nobody thinks about this outcome. I don't think Trump thinks about that outcome. What if China says no? Fuck you, United States. We're not going to fucking, you got Germany as your bitch. You got Japan as your bitch. We're not going to be your bitch. So I think the greatest point to ask if you're a trader right now, what if China says no? Well, now you got BRICS, right? So if the United States is going to increase tariffs on China, okay, could China tolerate some pain? Sure. But they got now other markets available to them to where, okay, these markets may not be income per capita rich like United States, but in totality, okay, China can slowly replace United States market, even though it has to tolerate some temporary pain. And then who wins then? United States, who don't make 90% of shit that China makes? Like, that is the question to ask. What if China says no? Who's going to get fucked? It's the United States that's going to get fucked. So, guys, the market is absolutely remarkable. The playbook is quite simple, with a few things that, are unprecedented, such as the level of the trade deficit that we're about to see, the trade of budget deficit, the level of budget deficit that we're about to see, at a moment where, United States is not in the position to negotiate from the position of strength. Yeah, still the biggest military in the world, but the world now is better prepared for these double-face bullshit of the United States. And the only way to fight that, I would say, is for people in the United States to say, like, look, at one point we were making better stuff than the rest of the world. At one point, we were rightfully the fastest growing economy, the fastest growing everything. But now, the United States is making fun of Russia. This is fucking ridiculous, right? You got fucking Blinken, motherfucker. That dude don't know shit from shit. I mean, I can't believe that motherfucker holds a public office in the United States. But that motherfucker, he goes recently on public television. He's like, yeah, but our unemployment rate here in the United States is just above 4%. And we got this, and, our GDP is at 3%. Like, motherfuckers, the unemployment rate in Russia is 2%. How about that for a fucking record? The unemployment, the GDP in Russia is at 4%. Now, if you're going to throw these kind of numbers, fucking blinking, you should know, okay, that you probably blinked, motherfucker, and you don't know the latest statistics on Russian employment or Russian GDP, because you look like a complete idiot throwing out those statistics, which, by the way, guys, we all know fucking GDP in the United States, it's not at fucking 3%. And they keep bringing that, saying, well, but the Atlanta GDP forecast is saying this. Atlanta GDP forecast gets their shit wrong by more than most of the Wall Street analysts, damn it. I mean, the Atlanta GDP forecast is like correct in 1% of instances. It gets shit wrong in 99% of instances. So, guys, the setup for trading looks very, very compelling going forward from here. There's going to be colossal drops, potential real strong bounces in certain commodities like gold, depending on the repetition of the U.S. foreign policy. I mean, we're looking at a very, very interesting setup. So you've got a lot to look forward to in 2025 as a trader. You have a lot of developments that's going to produce some sharp moves in the market to the downside and the upside. And I invite you to trade it with 30 market moves. If you aspire to put together 10x, 20x, 50x trades, even 100x plus trades, with utilizing option strategies, simple option strategies, guys. You don't need to be doing no iron condors. You don't need to be doing no, forget about all these more complex option strategies. You simply need to understand the sequence of the moves with 30 market moves, combine it with this historic map that I outlined briefly in this podcast. You focus on those two things and the move expansion, which can all be learned by trading with a coach, and you will have your shot at 10x, 20x, 50x, 100x plus trades over the course of next few months, over the course of next 12 months, guys. I just don't want those of you that are serious about trading to, miscalculate a strike by a little bit, to miscalculate your entry by a little bit, and not get the reward of being able to put together those kind of trades. So if you're serious about growing your account in 2025, trade it fearlessly, trade it with 30 Market Moves Coach by going to 13mmtv.com or 13marketmoves.com and signing up today. Let's roll. Big year ahead.